You've been taught to believe only what you can see, and that's precisely why you're blind. From the moment you opened your eyes, the world began its subtle deception, conditioning you to perceive reality as solid, measurable, and external. It whispers that reality ends at your skin, that consciousness is a mere byproduct of the brain, and that anything unseen is relegated to the realm of fantasy. But deep beneath this cacophony of misinformation, buried under layers of dogma and societal distraction, lies an ancient, unwavering truth that has terrified the power brokers of every age and remains hidden in plain sight. The truth is this: the universe is not fundamentally composed of matter, it is born of mind. And everything you perceive as real is a mere reflection, a shimmering echo of something far more profound, something inherently invisible. Hermeticism wasn't just a philosophical relic of the ancient world. It was both a stark warning and a revolutionary blueprint. It unveiled a multi-layered reality, shaped and influenced by unseen forces, by intelligent energies, and by a substance even more primordial than light itself: the Aether. If you don't recognize that name, it's not due to its non-existence. It's because those who benefit from your limited perception desperately needed you to forget. You were never educated to see the world in its breathtaking totality. Instead, you were meticulously trained to perceive only that which fits neatly within the narrow confines of materialism. From your earliest memories, your senses were subtly filtered, dulled by constant distraction, and carefully shaped to serve a system that thrives on your unwitting blindness. Take a moment to truly look around. Every tenet you've been taught about reality begins with the unchallenged assumption that only what can be empirically measured truly matters. Atoms, cells, and immutable physical laws are presented as the sum total of existence, and anything that transcends these boundaries, energy fields, intention, the very concept of spirit, is dismissed as delusion, folklore, or outright madness. But the ancient wisdom keepers, the Hermeticists, the mystics, the initiates of forgotten schools, did not share this impoverished view. They grasped a fundamental truth that we have been deliberately conditioned to forget. Reality exists in layers, like the concentric circles of a boundless ocean. The visible world is merely the crest of a wave, a fleeting surface phenomenon. Beneath the superficial skin of the world flows an invisible, interconnected current, a subtle force that binds all things together in a cosmic web. This primordial substance, revered by the ancients as Aether, was not a superstitious fantasy. It was a core principle of their sophisticated cosmology. To them, Aether represented the living breath of the divine mind, the very medium through which spirit molds and shapes form. It permeated every aspect of existence, seamlessly connecting heaven and earth, mind and matter, thought and experience. And for centuries, the concept of Aether wasn't confined to the esoteric realms. Many early scientists embraced it as well, before their voices were systematically silenced. Before the seismic shift in worldview, the deliberate campaign against Aether didn't originate in religious institutions. It began insidiously within the hallowed halls of universities. In the gradual transition from a worldview steeped in metaphysics and reverence to one rooted in cold, hard mechanism and reductionism, the concept of Aether became a direct threat to the established order. Why? Because its very existence confirmed that consciousness was not a prisoner within the skull, that energy was not merely a force, but a potent carrier of intention, and most dangerously, that human beings were far more than simply biological machines. If Aether was indeed real, then the soul too must be real. And if the soul possessed genuine existence, then the elaborate systems designed to control bodies would prove woefully inadequate to control minds. That was a reality that simply could not be tolerated, so they erased it quietly and systematically, replacing it with sterile equations and soulless particle models that effectively separated the observer from the observed, the spirit from the very concept of self. They buried Aether beneath an avalanche of ridicule, dismissing it as obsolete and unscientific. And yet, despite their concerted efforts, traces of Aether stubbornly persist, lingering in every intuitive feeling you've ever experienced, in the subtle way your mere presence can shift the energetic atmosphere of a room, in the undeniable fact that thought can indeed move flesh, that dreams can alter your very trajectory, that emotions can profoundly impact your physical health. These are not simply glitches in the matrix of reality. They are fleeting glimpses through the carefully constructed veil. The truth is that your entire perceptual reality has been meticulously shaped to keep you tethered to the superficial, the easily manipulated. You are presented with forms, but not with the underlying frequencies that create them. You are given names, but not the essential essences they represent. The Hermeticists understood this deception all too well. They knew that behind every tangible object lies a vibrant, resonating vibration. And behind that vibration lies the very essence of mind. Ether was the indispensable bridge between what is readily seen and what ultimately causes it to be seen. Lose the bridge and you irrevocably lose the ability to comprehend your true place in the grand tapestry of the cosmos. You become a prisoner of surfaces, enslaved by the limited capacity of your five senses, and tragically blind to the very forces that ceaselessly shape your life. That is why Hermeticism is not merely ancient wisdom. It is forbidden knowledge, actively suppressed and deliberately obscured. It offers a viable pathway out of the perceptual cage, a unique lens through which you can begin to perceive that which the world vehemently refuses to name. And the very moment you begin to truly understand Ether, you will begin to feel it, not as a mere intellectual belief, but as a palpable presence that permeates the silence, the profound stillness, the exquisite space between your very breaths. Some of this knowledge is simply too ancient and too potentially destabilizing to fully disclose here. You are never truly supposed to wake up. That is the ultimate secret that they guard with such fanatical zeal. They didn't simply hide the ether from your conscious awareness. They actively concealed your innate ability to feel it, to sense its subtle vibrations. They drowned it out with a relentless barrage of noise, flooded your senses with carefully orchestrated screams, and systematically taught you to ridicule anything that you couldn't readily touch, taste, or measure. But the ultimate joke is on them, because you are starting to feel something now, aren't you? That almost imperceptible pressure behind your persistent thoughts, that subtle, persistent hum that underlies your daily routine, that fleeting flicker in the periphery of your awareness that whispers, "There is so much more to this than you know." And indeed, there is immeasurably more. Not everything that controls you wears a uniform or brandishes a badge of authority. Some of the most powerful forces shaping your life are not physical, they are unseen, ancient, and yet intimately familiar. You felt their subtle influence before, even if you couldn't consciously name them. The unrelenting pressure to conform to societal expectations, the irrational fear of change that gnaws at your potential, the insidious inner voice that perpetually seeks to keep you small, anxious, and obedient to the established order. The Gnostics referred to these subtle yet pervasive forces as Archons, interdimensional intelligences whose primary purpose is not necessarily to destroy you outright, but rather to meticulously manage you, to effectively contain your consciousness within the carefully constructed boundaries of illusion, to ensure that you never fully realize the limitless potential of what you truly are. These entities do not typically manifest as horned and winged figures hovering menacingly in the sky. Instead, they embed themselves within the very systems of thought, belief, and governance that shape your world. They are the insidious gatekeepers of perception, subtly influencing your every decision. According to both Hermetic and Gnostic teachings, Archons are not inherently evil, but they thrive on order, predictability, and energetic stability. In the simplest of terms, they thrive on your utter predictability. Every time you mindlessly repeat the same limiting thoughts, relentlessly follow the same soul-crushing routines, and blindly obey the same unquestioned authorities, you are, in essence, feeding them. Not just in a metaphorical sense, but on a very real, energetic level. Because the true battlefield is not the external world, it exists entirely within the landscape of your own mind. When you were a child, you were naturally fluid, intensely imaginative, and gloriously open to the infinite possibilities of the universe. You didn't perceive the rigid boundaries that adults imposed on the world. You felt things with an intensity that defied easy categorization. You were connected to a deeper truth. But slowly, insidiously, structure was introduced, and with it, the slow death of your unbridled spirit. Words subtly replaced feelings, rigid rules replaced innate instincts, and limiting labels replaced the expansive essence of your being. And that is precisely when the Archons subtly stepped in, not as terrifying monsters, but as insidious ideas. They whispered subtle things like, "That's just how life is. You're not quite good enough to achieve your dreams. Stay safe within the confines of the familiar. Fit in seamlessly, and you will be rewarded." They systematically taught you to fear your own boundless expansion, to trade authentic freedom for fleeting approval, to treat unquestioning conformity as the highest form of wisdom, and to accept the deeply flawed system we call society as the ultimate authority. It is their perfectly crafted playground, a world designed to perpetuate their subtle influence. The Archons don't need to overtly force you into submission. They have painstakingly built a world that effectively does it for them. A world where unquestioning compliance is lavishly rewarded and genuine resistance is systematically pathologized, where attention is relentlessly hijacked, where truth is carefully buried beneath layers of entertainment, and where any form of questioning authority is perceived as inherently dangerous. Every cleverly crafted scroll, every catchy slogan, every insidious algorithm is merely a thread in their vast and intricate web of control. And the more entangled you become, the more distant your soul inevitably begins to feel. But the Hermeticists didn't just passively name the Archons, they also diligently revealed their inherent weakness. These beings are not true creators, they are merely imitators, skilled mimics. They don't possess the ability to truly invent. They can only subtly reflect what you willingly give them. And what they fear most, above all else, is your own inner light. Not any form of external rebellion, but the quiet yet unshakable force of your internal sovereignty. A mind that persistently questions, a heart that stubbornly remembers, a soul that resolutely refuses to submit. These are the forces that truly threaten their carefully constructed edifice of control. The presence of Archons isn't some fantastical delusion, it is a deeply experiential reality. Have you ever attempted to make a truly radical change in your life and suddenly felt an inexplicable and invisible resistance, not necessarily from others, but powerfully from within yourself? That isn't simply fear, that is programming, plain and simple. That's the inherent system kicking in to keep you safely ensconced within your assigned lane. You don't need physical shackles when your own mind has been meticulously conditioned to unconsciously avoid the very door that leads to liberation. But something ancient and undeniably powerful within you has begun to stir, that persistent inner whisper, the one that has grown steadily louder over the years, isn't just mere intuition. It's a potent memory, a faint echo of a time when you were not owned, when your thoughts were truly your own, when your dreams remained gloriously undistorted, and when your very will was essentially unbroken. The Archons cannot directly touch that essential part of you. They can only relentlessly distract you from finding it, from nurturing its inherent power. And here is what they desperately don't want you to know. Once you truly recognize them for what they are, they begin to lose their insidious power. Once you name the persistent voice in your head that relentlessly doubts you, not as your own authentic voice, but as a subtle parasite feeding on your insecurities, it will inevitably begin to shrink and wither. Pure awareness is like potent acid to their subtle influence. That's precisely why they engineered a world of constant noise and relentless distraction, so that you would never have the opportunity to truly hear your own authentic signal, your own unique inner voice. But silence is inexorably returning, stillness is quietly re-emerging, and through that ever-widening crack in the very system of control, a brilliant light is beginning to pour in. They may have controlled your outer world for countless generations, but your inner world, your sovereign consciousness, was never truly theirs to keep. And once you reclaim that inherent power, nothing, no government, no belief system, no invisible entity can ever truly hold you captive again. There is a voice deep inside you that has always been there, subtle, unwavering, and ancient. It is the quiet whisper you consistently ignored when you chose the fleeting comfort of conformity over the challenging path of courage. It is the irresistible pull you felt towards the profound truth when everyone around you stubbornly clung to the comforting lie. That voice is not your ego, your conditioned programming, or your inherent fear. It is your daemon, the unseen guide that Hermeticism speaks of, not as a mere metaphor, but as a literal, tangible spiritual presence. And chances are, You've been meticulously trained your entire life to deliberately ignore it. In modern parlance, the word demon carries decidedly sinister connotations, conjuring images of something to be cast out or forcefully exorcised. But in ancient Hermetic, Platonic, and Gnostic traditions, the daemon was revered, held in the highest esteem. It was not inherently evil, it was not inherently chaotic. Rather, it was your essential link to the divine mind, your own personal emissary from the realm beyond the confines of form. Think of it as the indispensable bridge between your lower self, the part of you bound to instinct and illusion, and your higher self, the part of you that is intrinsically aligned with higher purpose, expansive vision, and eternal truth. Your demon does not exist outside of you. It is subtly embedded within your very consciousness, speaking not in readily understandable words, but rather in powerful symbols, intense feelings, meaningful synchronicities, and vivid dreams. And the primary reason you've struggled so mightily to truly hear it is not because it is inherently weak, it is because the relentless noise around you is simply deafening, drowning out its subtle guidance. From your earliest childhood, you were subtly taught to distrust that powerful inner pull. You were consistently rewarded for dutifully following rules, not for fearlessly trusting your innate instincts. You were praised for passively repeating facts, not for daring to ask deeper, more challenging questions. You were meticulously conditioned to believe that genuine guidance comes solely from external authority figures, not from the profound wisdom that resides deep within. And every single time you felt something significant stir in your gut, something undeniably deeper, something undeniably truer, you were promptly told to suppress it, to dismiss it as mere childish imagination. But Hermeticists understood that pure imagination is not a frivolous fantasy. It is a potent form of heightened perception, a direct means of accessing the subtle realms where the daemon resides. Your demon is not there to flatter you or cater to your ego. It doesn't concern itself with your career status, your superficial likes, or your number of social media followers. It is singularly focused on one primary thing, helping you to clearly remember who you truly are. Not the carefully constructed version of you that was shaped by societal pressures, traumatic experiences, or limiting cultural expectations, but rather the essential version that existed powerfully before any of that conditioning took hold. It is the soul in its raw, unpolished, and powerfully authentic form. And when you actively resist the guidance of your daemon, when you persistently choose the illusion of conformity over the authentic calling of your soul, you will inevitably feel it. The nagging anxiety, the persistent ache, the quiet yet undeniable sense of dislocation, of being fundamentally out of sync with your true purpose. Because to betray the calling of your daemon is to deeply fracture your very soul. But to fearlessly follow it, to surrender to its subtle yet profound guidance, is where things begin to truly shift, where the genuine path of your life opens up before you, not the preordained path that others have relentlessly laid out for you, but the uniquely personal one that winds through mystery, challenge, and ultimately breathtaking transformation. The Hermetic path is not about achieving external success or material wealth. It is not about being perceived as conventionally good in the eyes of the world. It is about achieving genuine alignment, living in harmonious resonance with your authentic daemon, fearlessly allowing it to guide you through the inevitable darkness and pervasive uncertainty. That is precisely how initiates in ancient mystery schools were rigorously tested, not by the amount of esoteric knowledge they had passively acquired, but rather by how willing they were to wholeheartedly surrender to the profound wisdom that resided deep within their own souls. And the daemon does not typically shout commands. It nudges you gently, subtly. It patiently waits for you to be ready to listen. It calls to you through vivid symbols, through sudden and unexpected insights, through the strange and seemingly inexplicable coincidences that logic simply cannot account for. Every single time you inexplicably see the same recurring number pattern, feel an irresistible pull towards a particular book, or meet a seemingly random person who fundamentally changes your life's direction. It is there, watching you intently, quietly guiding you, not forcefully controlling you, but rather offering you the potent gift of choice. And in a world meticulously designed to drown that subtle inner signal in an overwhelming sea of persistent doubt, simply choosing to listen is a radical act of rebellion against the forces that seek to control you. You don't actually need to consciously find your daemon. It has never truly left you. You have merely been systematically tuned to the wrong frequency, conditioned to perceive the world through a distorted lens. Begin by simply listening, not to the relentless noise of the world, but rather to the exquisite stillness, to the pregnant space between your own persistent thoughts. In that profound silence, it will gently speak. And when you begin to fearlessly follow its subtle yet insistent lead, something truly astonishing will inevitably occur. The meaningful synchronicities in your life will drastically increase, profound clarity will steadily return, and the very path of your life will begin to sharpen into clear and undeniable focus. You will no longer feel compelled to desperately chase after meaning. You will effortlessly remember it. And in doing so, you will reclaim something that the world has tirelessly worked to relentlessly strip from you, your very spiritual sovereignty. You were never truly meant to walk through life blind, stumbling through the darkness. You were never truly alone in your seeking, in your persistent quest for authentic truth. The deeply wise guide you have been diligently searching for has always resided powerfully within you, not as a distant god above, not as a robed guru on a distant mountaintop, but as a quiet and unwavering guardian of your own inherent truth, your daemon. And once you consciously choose to answer that persistent call, the entire intricately woven map of your life will begin to spontaneously rearrange itself around a deeper, more profound intelligence, one that has been patiently waiting for your recognition all along. There is a truth so profoundly ancient, so stunningly simple, and so infinitely powerful that it has been carefully buried beneath centuries of persistent confusion and deliberate misdirection. The universe is inherently mental, not just metaphorically, not just symbolically, but in the most literal sense imaginable. According to the core tenets of Hermeticism, all of reality emerges from a single unified source, the divine mind. Everything that you see, touch, feel, or even think is ultimately a ripple, a fleeting wave within that vast and infinite mind. You are not truly separate from it. In essence, you are it, experiencing itself through the uniquely individual lens of your own conscious awareness. This is not simply a feel-good spiritual belief. It is a fundamental metaphysical law that governs the very fabric of reality. In Hermetic philosophy, the divine mind, often referred to as nous, represents the very origin of all form. Before matter existed, before energy came into being, before even the abstract concept of time took shape, there was pure, undivided intelligence. That intelligence didn't explode into chaotic randomness as modern scientific materialism would have you believe. Rather, it deliberately unfolded with purpose and intention. It thoughtfully imagined. It meticulously created layered experiences, diverse dimensions of meaning, and the spiraling complexities of time itself, all as expressions of a single, unified, and undeniably living intelligence. This implies that you are not some accidental biological fluke adrift in a cold and meaningless cosmos. You are a vital node within an infinite consciousness, a thought wrapped in flesh, a radiant spark of a much greater and infinitely expansive fire. And yet, the limited world you were carefully raised in relentlessly teaches you the precise opposite. It attempts to convince you that mind comes after matter, that thought is merely a transient side effect of complex brain chemistry, that consciousness is fragile, fleeting, and ultimately inconsequential. But ask yourself, what do you undeniably experience first in every waking moment, the external world or your own inherent awareness of it? Even mainstream science, when pressed hard enough, begins to crumble at the very edges of this profound and fundamental question. Quantum physics tells us that the observer inextricably influences the observed, that subatomic particles don't even exist in a definite state until they are consciously measured, that reality is not some fixed and objective entity, but rather a fundamentally participatory phenomenon. What the ancient wisdom keepers intuitively understood for millennia, modern science is only now beginning to tentatively whisper. But Hermeticism has already boldly screamed it from the rooftops of its ancient temples. The universe is not simply filled with consciousness, it is consciousness, in its purest and most potent form. And when you truly understand this profound and transformative truth, something deep inside you will inevitably and irrevocably shift. You will naturally cease chasing after fleeting external validation because you will begin to truly realize that the world is not simply happening to you, it is fundamentally happening through you. Your deepest beliefs directly shape your individual experience. Your conscious attention diligently carves the very path of your life. What you choose to consistently dwell upon, you will inevitably draw into your reality, not through simple wishful thinking, but through the very immutable physics of conscious awareness. This is what the insidious Archons fear above all else. A mind that fully understands its own inherent power is a mind that can no longer be easily manipulated. A soul that knows deep in its very core that it is essentially divine will no longer be compelled to obey out of fear or ingrained habit. Rather, it will fearlessly create from a place of authentic alignment with the very source of its own being. It will intentionally disrupt. It will audaciously dream. It will persistently remember. That is precisely why you were subtly taught to dismiss all of this as mere mystical fluff, inconsequential and divorced from tangible reality. Because the very moment you fully realize that you are not merely a passive victim of creation, but rather a fully empowered co-creator of it, the game inevitably ends. And here is where the foundational Hermetic principle, as above, so below, truly comes alive with potent force. The vast macrocosm and the intensely personal microcosm perfectly mirror each other because they are ultimately reflections of the very same unified thought. Your inner world is not separate from the vast outer world. Rather, it is a perfect fractal representation of the whole. Shift your own mind and the entire pattern inevitably shifts along with it. That is precisely why genuine spiritual growth is not merely a personal pursuit. It is a cosmic imperative, a vital force for universal transformation. Every single profound insight, every significant breakthrough, every act of genuine healing inevitably sends powerful ripples through the very fabric of the all. You don't truly need to escape from the world in order to find the divine mind. In reality, you are already swimming within it, immersed in its boundless essence. Every sound you hear, every sensation you experience, every fleeting flash of intuition is merely a pulse, a vibration of that all-encompassing intelligence. When you consciously meditate, when you thoughtfully reflect, when you vividly dream, you are not escaping from the constraints of reality. You are simply sinking deeper within its true and inexhaustible source. That is precisely why profound silence is so inherently sacred. It is not simply emptiness. It is the very place where the subtle voice of the all can finally be distinctly heard. And here is perhaps the most profound and transformative part of it all. Just as you are inextricably contained within the divine mind, so too is the divine mind undeniably contained within you. The sacred is not some distant force locked away in remote temples or buried deep within dusty books. It is powerfully pulsing right behind your very thoughts, patiently waiting to be consciously acknowledged. The authentic Hermetic path does not lead you away from the world and its inherent challenges. Rather, it leads you deeper into it through heightened awareness, powerful intention, and fundamental alignment. You have always been creating every moment of every day. Every limiting thought you relentlessly repeat, every fear-inducing image you consistently feed yourself, every careless word you habitually speak all indelibly leaves its lasting imprint upon the very field of reality. The central question, therefore, is not whether you are actively shaping your life. The question is whether you are doing it consciously and intentionally, or whether you are simply passively allowing others to do it for you, to manipulate you into blindly following their agenda. The divine mind doesn't demand worship. It doesn't issue rigid commands. It simply offers you one eternal and unwavering truth. You are not separate in any meaningful sense of the word. You never truly were. You are both the seen and the seer, the thought and the thinker, the dream and the dreamer. And the very moment you genuinely grasp that transformative truth, the insidious illusion of separation will utterly dissolve, and you will clearly remember what it truly means to be infinite, to be one with the source of all creation. Long before gravity was distilled into a succinct formula or light was artfully broken into measurable wavelengths, ancient minds intuitively understood something that we have stubbornly forgotten in our relentless pursuit of soulless materialism. Everything is inextricably connected by something inherently invisible, not just metaphorically, but in the most literal sense imaginable. that something was reverently called ether. It wasn't just another mundane element within a periodic table. It was the very first and the very last, the elusive breath between all things, the subtle medium that seamlessly carries all vibration, all light, all thought. Not merely empty air, not simply formless space, not merely a black void, but rather a subtle and undeniably intelligent substance that thoroughly filled the cosmos and inherently made the seemingly impossible very possible. Without its pervasive influence, spirit simply couldn't touch matter. Thought simply couldn't shape form. And consciousness simply couldn't move effortlessly through the physical body like electricity coursing through a wire. Ether represented the very divine bloodstream of the vast and ever-expanding universe. And then, almost as if a switch was purposefully flipped, we were abruptly told that it simply didn't exist, that it was merely a figment of primitive imagination. Modern science boldly rejected the concept of ether, not because it was convincingly disproven through rigorous testing, but rather because it was ultimately inconvenient to the prevailing worldview. It simply didn't fit neatly into the cold, mechanical perspective that sought to portray the universe as predictable, lifeless, and ultimately dead. Ether subtly suggested the antithesis, that reality is vibrant, inherently alive, fluid, and significantly influenced by conscious intention. It subtly implied that human beings are not merely passive spectators of the cosmos, but rather active and powerful participants within it. And if ether was indeed real, then everything from ritual practices, prayer, genuine healing, direct intuition, and energetic transmission would suddenly make perfect sense. That was a prospect that simply couldn't be allowed to permeate the collective consciousness, not in a world meticulously built on pervasive control, rigid compartmentalization, and forced conformity. So ether was systematically cut out of the established narrative, scrubbed from ubiquitous textbooks, rewritten as mere myth, and yet its undeniable echoes stubbornly remain. You can feel it in tangible places that mainstream science simply cannot measure, in the palpable magnetic charge of a truly sacred site, in the uncanny sensation that someone is intently staring at you before you consciously see them, in the remarkable way that music can deeply alter your very body chemistry, profoundly shift your emotional state, and seamlessly open your very soul. Ether is not simply a dry theoretical concept. It is a deeply experiential reality readily available to all. It's the tangible tingling silence that precedes a profound insight, the invisible current that subtly runs through your entire body during deep meditation, the undeniable presence that underlies every significant synchronicity. When people claim that the energy in this room feels heavy, they are, in essence, describing the potent presence of ether. When you feel yourself flowing effortlessly with the current of life, you are actively moving through it. The Hermeticists inherently understood this subtle dynamic. Their entire sophisticated cosmology depended entirely upon its existence. The four classical elements, earth, air, fire, and water, were never considered complete without the essential presence of ether. Because ether wasn't merely another element to be categorized, it was the very field that subtly held them all in perfect balance. Every sacred symbol, every ancient rite, every geometrically perfect structure from the imposing pyramids of Egypt to the intricate mandalas of Tibet were meticulously designed to consciously manipulate ether, to skillfully move it, to amplify its inherent power, to readily receive its beneficial influence. Do you really believe that those ancient temples were merely built of lifeless stone and primitive superstition? They were carefully crafted technology, sophisticated etheric technology, pure and simple. And we have tragically forgotten how to skillfully use it. But you haven't completely lost the innate ability to feel it. You have simply been meticulously trained to habitually dismiss it as irrational or irrelevant. When you unexpectedly think of someone and they suddenly call you, that's not merely coincidence, that's transmission through ether. When a particular place feels profoundly sacred without any readily apparent explanation, that's not simply an emotional response. That's direct resonance with a deeply powerful energy field. The ether is like an expansive ocean that we have always been swimming in, and only now are we slowly beginning to remember that it is undeniably there. Even mainstream science is tentatively beginning to circle back to the very concept of ether, although without explicitly naming it as such. Quantum fields, zero-point energy, non-locality. All of these are mere shadows of the ether deliberately described without directly acknowledging it. The seemingly empty vacuum of space isn't actually empty at all. Rather, it's inherently charged, undeniably alive, and constantly bursting with unbridled potential. That's what the Hermeticists profoundly knew long ago. That matter is invariably born from vibration. That vibration moves through ether, and that ether is ultimately guided by conscious mind. And that is the key to understanding everything. Ether doesn't merely exist in a vacuum, it actively responds to conscious intention. It diligently listens to the subtle vibrations of consciousness. Which means that your thoughts don't simply stay passively trapped inside your head, they actually echo powerfully outward, shaping outcomes in ways that you can barely begin to fathom. They profoundly affect others in ways that you may not even be consciously aware of. This is precisely why conscious manifestation truly works. Not because the universe is some mindless, wish-granting machine, but rather because ether is the very delivery system for conscious will, intense focus, consistent repetition, and powerful emotion. These are not merely esoteric spiritual practices. They are sophisticated technologies for artfully bending ether to consciously align with your chosen path. So, when they meticulously told you to believe only in what you can readily see with your physical eyes, they were, in essence, deliberately cutting you off from the most inherently powerful part of yourself. Because once you truly begin to sense the ether, once you consciously remember how to skillfully use it, absolutely everything will inevitably change. You will gradually become more than mere flesh and blood, more than just the sum total of your persistent thoughts. You will seamlessly become aligned with the very medium that meticulously holds entire galaxies in perfect formation. And from that significantly expanded place of awareness, life will no longer feel as though it is merely happening to you. Rather, it will feel as though it is happening through you, with you, and ultimately, powerfully, as you. Genuine transformation invariably begins not when the world magically changes around you, but when the meticulously constructed world inside you dramatically cracks open. The Hermeticists never guaranteed salvation through blind belief or empty ritual alone. They didn't passively worship sacred symbols for mere tradition's sake. Rather, they skillfully used them as potent tools, as intricate keys designed to unlock hidden potential, because the real temple was never physically built of mere stone. The authentic initiation was always undeniably psychological. The true work was alchemical, not in the superficial sense of turning lead into tangible gold, but rather in the much deeper sense of transforming the dense, reactive, and wounded parts of the self into radiant consciousness, into the gold of self-awareness. Inner alchemy requires brutal self-honesty, a willingness to confront the darkest aspects of your being. In Hermeticism, the human being is not seen as a finished product, but rather as a dynamic process, ongoing, layered, and continually unfolding. You are, at once, the matter, the vessel, and the alchemist, all united within a single being. The goal isn't to somehow escape from your inherent humanity, but rather to actively refine it, to distill your experiences, your deepest fears, and your persistent memories into the crystal-clear essence of self-awareness. This isn't merely about superficial self-improvement, this is about radical self-reconstruction, about consciously dismantling the limiting structures you've been taught to identify with. Because most of what you currently call yourself is likely either inherited, unconsciously programmed, or habitually reactive. Initiation begins the precise moment you genuinely realize this and consciously choose to burn it all down, to fearlessly embrace the transformative power of the alchemical fire. The ancients wisely called this the path of fire, not the destructive fire that razes everything to the ground, but rather the purifying fire that alchemically transforms base elements into pure gold. And it invariably starts with profound discomfort, with the relentless signal of pain. The false self will vehemently resist this process. It will stubbornly cling to old, familiar patterns, predictable suffering, and emotionally numbing cycles. But the deeper part of you, the daemon-guided, etherically connected self, inherently knows that pain is merely pressure from a deeper truth that is desperately trying to surface. That insidious anxiety isn't simply dysfunction. It's a profound misalignment, and that persistent numbness isn't actually peace. It's merely suppression, the deliberate stifling of your authentic self. Inner alchemy is ultimately about directly confronting all of that head-on, not about artfully numbing the pain or distracting yourself from the underlying truth. You were taught to fear your own shadow, to relentlessly hide the inherent chaos within. But Hermeticism teaches the exact opposite, that your very darkness is the primary material, the raw ore, the hidden place where genuine gold invariably lies buried. Authentic alchemy isn't inherently clean. It's often messy, volatile, and inherently wild. You don't actually get to consciously bypass your wounds. Rather, you diligently transmute them. You bravely sit with them until they fully reveal their precious lessons, their underlying patterns, and the potent power that has been trapped within. And as you consistently do, something truly incredible begins to spontaneously happen. Your carefully constructed identity gradually stops being a stifling cage and starts seamlessly becoming a potent compass. You stop passively reacting to external stimuli and begin artfully responding with intention. You stop endlessly chasing elusive meaning and begin consciously embodying it. This is precisely why the Hermetic path was always diligently walked in carefully delineated stages, because no one simply wakes up fully refined, perfectly enlightened. Each subsequent stage of awakening peels back another carefully constructed layer of illusion, and you begin to truly see how every limiting belief, every emotionally charged trigger, every persistent pattern in your life is ultimately a reflection of something subtly occurring within. The world gradually ceases to be a relentless battlefield and seamlessly transforms into a clear and revealing mirror. And that utterly changes everything. Because once you stop compulsively blaming the external and consistently start diligently working with the internal, you will naturally access the one thing that the insidious Archons can never truly touch: your very will. Inner alchemy teaches you how to skillfully wield that potent will, not impulsively or recklessly, but with measured precision. Not to somehow control others to selfishly suit your agenda, but rather to consciously command your own reality, to shape your experience with intention and grace. This is precisely why true initiates consistently walked so quietly, so humbly. They weren't desperately chasing after fleeting status or material wealth. Rather, they were diligently mastering the subtle art of personal vibration. Their thoughts were carefully measured, their words were deliberately intentional, and their emotions were intentionally purified, not repressed, but rather consciously aligned with their higher purpose. They didn't feel the need to forcibly dominate the external world around them, because they had diligently mastered the much more challenging world within. And make no mistake about it, this is genuine war, not against external enemies, but against the insidious noise that has been meticulously programmed into your very being. The gnawing fear, the persistent doubt, the relentlessly critical inner voice that perpetually whispers, "You're not ready for this. You're simply not good enough. You're inherently too much and not enough all at the same time." These insidious voices are not authentically yours. They are merely the lingering residues of persistent conditioning, fragmented echoes of powerfully cast cultural spells. And every single time you consciously transmute one of these deeply ingrained patterns, you inherently take your potent power back. You reclaim another integral piece of yourself from the all-consuming grip of unconsciousness. This is what genuine initiation truly means, not a sterile ritual performed in secret chambers, but rather 1,000 continuous moments of quiet courage, of persistently facing yourself, consistently forgiving yourself, and courageously freeing yourself again and again until the accumulated weight you have carelessly carried for years begins to gradually lift, until the insidious chaos within quietly becomes calm, until you feel, perhaps for the very first time, that your precious life is not merely random, but rather a carefully crafted path, a deliberate process, a sacred unfolding of your ultimate destiny. You don't actually need anyone's permission to begin. You don't need a guru to unlock the door to your infinite potential. You are the philosopher's stone. You are the vessel, the fire, and the gold. The Hermetic path doesn't guarantee a life of endless ease. Rather, it boldly promises a life of continuous evolution, a path of ceaseless expansion. And if you are still reading these words, still feeling something powerful stir just beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, then your potent alchemy has already undeniably begun. The world you inhabit loves to pretend that it has independently invented all knowledge, that its insights are uniquely original. It readily takes fragments of ancient truths, artfully wraps them in layers of esoteric jargon, lavishly coats them in copious data, and then boldly claims it all. So, what have we uncovered here? It's a call to remember what you already inherently know, that you are more than just a physical being, that the world is far more than just what you can see and touch, and that you possess the power to actively shape your reality by connecting with your inner wisdom and the universal mind. It's about stepping out of the shadows of control and into the brilliant light of your own sovereign consciousness, guided by your daemon and actively shaping your world through Aether. This is just the beginning of a conversation, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What resonated with you most in this exploration? Do you have any experiences that align with these concepts? Leave a comment below. I'm really interested in hearing your unique perspective and any questions that came up for you. Let's start a discussion together and share this new lens of seeing the world. And if you found this exploration valuable and you want to dive deeper into the unseen realms and reclaim your innate power, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date so you don't miss future videos on these kinds of topics.